Weird and wonderful go hand in hand, and that statement is no different for the strange beasts that we happen across in the treacherous landscape of video games. Whether it's foes made of mishmashed meat cuts, many-limbed horrors from the deep, or just straight-up cows deigned royal by bovine believers, there's some pretty weird monsters you'll go up against should you dive on into the realm of joystick jousting. And speaking of joystick jousting, Jules is here too for a look at all things odd. As where there is weird, he's all over it like a tentacle on hentai. Say hello, Jules.
Hello, I feel like I've been wheeled out of the mental asylum just to look at the freak, poke him with sticks. Yeah, I'm here.
I'm Ash from WhatCulture, and these are 8 more weirdest video game enemies and what they represent.
Number 8, no more heroes, all the bosses. There is not a semblance of normality when it comes to the balls-to-the-walls weird game that is No More Heroes, a game which sees low-life weeb warrior Travis Touchdown valiantly vow to become the #1 ranked assassin in the world, all because he wants to boff this lass here. Yeah, he's not exactly the Pope. However, the bosses of the game, while being some of the best action sequences you can hope to play, are actually all character studies of Travis and the player themselves. There's way too much to detail in a single entry, but each of them showcases either a tragic flaw in our protagonist or a commentary on the concept of violence as gratification. And I can think of no better example of Travis being faced with his own limitations than with the showdown against Bad Girl. She represents the carnal pursuit of violence as sexual or at least immediate gratification. She sees no honor, no deeper meaning to the violence that surrounds her profession, and scoffs at Travis trying to justify his aggression under the guise of nobility or a quest to prove himself. In her eyes, he's just as bad as she is, even commenting how there is little to separate them. After all, as she points out, they both enjoy the violence, they both seek it out, and both of them are bloody good at killing.
Number 7, Minecraft, the Creepers. Creepers at their heart are just a bunch of green pixels. At least, that's what we tell ourselves when faced with a creature intent on delivering the most intense, visceral, and heartbreaking pain you could ever experience when you least expect it. Dropping in and exploding your hours and hours and hours of hard work into smithereens with one horrible surprise hiss that leaves only dirt blocks in their wake, they're one of the scariest and strangest looking monsters you can find. Surely something so cruel and maligned was intentional by design, right? Well, it turns out that the creeper is as unfortunate as its sad little face suggests, and came from accidentally coding a pig to taller rather than longer. Arguably, the accidental nature of its conception and the way it takes everything you love and turns it into bite-sized chunks for a laugh is indicative of something much bigger than a stressed-out green square bean. Creepers really are just a big analogy for life. Sometimes it blows up in your face for no reason. It doesn't matter how long or how hard you work, a green bastard can roll along and smash it all up for the heck of it. Who said Minecraft was for kids?
Number 6, Deadly Premonition Shadows. Deadly Premonition is a strange and ultimately near-perfect game, at least in my opinion. For every moment where I feel the rug has been pulled out from under me, there's another 10 that pull me back in with its charm, which kind of makes Ash's mum's crispy fanny the combination of the two, as that's a rug which keeps pulling me in again and again. What up, Wendy? Big love. And also, there's my 1 per Ash's list. Anyway, one of the most common enemies you'll end up fighting are the shadows. Now, at first, these guys look like a poor man's zombie. I mean, look at this guy. Looks like he slept funny, for Christ's sake. However, with a bit more analysis, you'll notice some very strange things. Why do they bend over backwards like Scott trying to listen to his own stinky-ass opinions? Why do they shove their hands down you like they're trying to make a collect call to your kidney? Why do they apologise so bloody much? Well, it's because they don't want to be there, and are in fact remnants of trapped spirits who were forced into aggressive outbursts by a chemical gas released by the government in the area long ago. Driven to madness, they murdered everything that they could see. Therefore, the doubled over movement and apologetic mumbling is reference to their minds becoming corrupted against their will. It makes them seem so pathetic, and you're almost doing them a favour shooting them in the arse/face. Bless him.
Number 5, Resident Evil 2 Dr. William Birkin. Poor William Birkin. What we know from the Resident Evil games is that the man was hunted down and shot, only for the G-virus he'd injected into himself to run wild on his dying body, turning him into a monster. Whilst the causation of Birkin's appearance is clear, exactly why he specifically turns into a creature of protruding limbs and eyeballs is open to interpretation. We know it's a natural result of the G-virus infection since the sewer creatures also grow eyes, but what could it mean? The G-virus's full name is the Golgotha virus, with Golgotha being the site where Jesus was crucified. The eyes could be a representation of Birkin's attempt to play God, that he is now the mutated and demonic version of the all-seeing, all-knowing entity he pretended to be by creating such life-altering viruses in the first place. That his weak point is poetic, his true weakness being that he thought he could create and change life in this way at all. In a broader manner, an evil eye is often a reference to wishing misfortune on those that receive it, another quite literal interpretation of the gaze coming from the aggressive Birkin, since his one desire is to kill continuously. That this can then be linked to African witchcraft also reinforces the idea, since that's where the flowers that sprung the original virus strains were initially found.
Number 4. The Suffering Ties That Bind, Gorges. Woof, The Suffering sure is a bleak game. I've seen war documentaries more fun than this prison paradise getaway experience, and that's in no small part thanks to the awful designs of the enemies housed within. Now, the second Suffering, also known as the newest wave of WhatCulture presenters, was also bloody brilliant and full to the brim with odd enemies that offer a lot of explanation when given a dissection. My personal favourites are those gorgeous gorges who just love ramming everything into their gaping maws, which kind of makes me wish I'd saved my one per list for this moment, to be honest. The gorges with their horrible bloating might at first appear just to be an incarnation of greed, but there's a much deeper backstory to it than that. As we're in the lovely, lovely Baltimore and the game leans heavily on horrors that transpired around the time of the Great Depression, the gorger isn't actually about greed, but about starvation and desperation. Digging into the game's lore, you can read about the lack of food that was available to the people at the time of the American crisis, and the story of parents telling their children that the reason they had nothing to eat was because a creature called the Gorger had come to steal it. We also get another charming tale of a vicar who tried to feed the poor people in his community, but when he ran out of food, he started thickening his broth with the bodies of those that died of starvation. It's pretty cost effective, but still ultimately pretty grim.
Number 3. The Last of Us Clickers. Explained in-game as being the result of humans that have been infected for longer than your average zombie, clickers sit somewhere between normal infected and bloatus on the Last of Us's evolutionary scale, with the latter a rarer, larger and older version of the fungal zombies that can tear your face off if you get too close.
Do what I like it.
But why do these beings look so bloody horrible, especially when compared to their rather human-looking counterparts? Clickers resemble the infection that renders them mindless killing machines, taking on a mushroomy appearance in the same way of the cordyceps fungus. And this locates itself largely on their faces since the virus inflicts itself on the brain to transform its host. Nature is of course reclaiming its natural state, as can be seen throughout the entirety of The Last of Us. The longer the infected are left, the more natural they become, returning the Earth to its desired state by fighting back with its own arsenal of fungal weapons. Stopping and listening is something that's so often heralded as a special moment in busy, bustling lives. And what better way to remind you of that than a murderous mushroom head who relies on sound to kill you? That'll make you quiet.
Number 2. Psychonauts Nightmares. In Psychonauts, your mission is to help clean up the emotional problems of the populace by diving inside their heads and seeing what makes them tick. It's a wonderful romp and easily one of my favourite games, and say it with me, kids, that Tim Shaver had a hand in. Got you again, you fools! Nightmares crop up twice in the game, once inside the mind of the milkman and again inside the beautifully 70s head of Agent Fidello. Their design is that of a horrible bug with multiple appendages, all of which are looking to grab and hold on to something. It's clear that the limbs are representative of the hold of which nightmares can have over people, and the insect head shows how they can infest our thoughts. Fidello's connection to these nightmares is especially dark as she locks her nightmares up inside her mind, and her nightmare is that of voices of children who she was unable to save from a fire a long, long time ago.
Number 1. Kingdoms of AMALUR Reckoning. Leon Ash. Screeching like a banshee, shaped somewhat by a mermaid's body, and ostensibly outwardly feminine in appearance, it is no surprise that actual folklore inspired these big bad monsters. Originating in Celtic legend, Leonanshi is translated to fairy lover, a female of the fae folk who takes a human partner, often an artist that wants to use their beauty as a muse for their work, and usually ends up going mad in the process. Leonanshi feast upon the life force of their partners, unknown to the rest of the world, by appearing as a normal, beautiful woman. Otherwise, people would probably have something to say about the giant draining monster attached to their pals. You'd hope, anyway. AMALUR's take on the legend is a mostly naked woman as a nod to this myth, alluring and beautiful though marked with dark magic and strangely inhuman extremities to signpost their true malicious intent. The Leonashes of AMALUR are an embodiment of the pain and suffering that Leonanshi inspire in their victims. They want to cause the player pain in the same way that their mythical counterpart does, just in a far more physical and obvious sense. And that's our list. What other weird monsters would you like to suggest for some examination? Give us some suggestions, as we'd love to dive further into weird video game monster lore. I've been Ash, and this has been WhatCulture.
And I've been Jules, and can you do me a little favour before you go? Not only should you be treating yourself as well as you possibly can, both physically and mentally, but also, if you want to do us a little favour, then why not swing by shop.whatculture.com or down below at the Teesprings website, and you can see all of the dead memes that we've got on a t-shirt for sale. It all goes towards helping us carry on this glorious burning ship that is slowly sinking into the sea of content. Quite dramatic, that, isn't it? Anyway, follow me at RetroJ with a 0 over on Twitter, and whatever Ash's handle is, it's probably something emo from the early 2000s. Anyway, speak to you soon. Bye.
Knew I shouldn't have let him on this list.